Chapter 470, The Pavilion of Book Collection. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. Alcyone shook her head and sighed with a struggling look. Obviously, she could not accept her failure. She had always been highly praised as the best genius. It was incredibly painful to taste failure for the first time. She even doubted her strength. Zhang Yuochen did not say anything more. There was something wrong with Alcyone's mindset, and she had to overcome it herself. When it was all said and done, there was nothing else Zhang Yuochen could do. It was up to her to vanquish her inner devil. If she could walk away from the shadow of failure, her heart state and martial arts would surely scale new heights. However, if she could not step out of the shadow, the speed of her next cultivation would certainly be slowed down. What's worse, she might not be able to reach the fish-dragon realm. Suddenly, a sound came out just as Zhang Yuochen was about to leave. Hold on. Zhang Yuochen turned and looked where the words came from. The man who had been standing by Xu Hai before came to him. The man looked rather mature. He was tall and thin, and seemed to be in a poor mood. He faced Zhang Yuochen and said, "Junior fellow apprentice Zhang, my name is Page. I also want to try your sword techniques." Page, such a familiar name. You're 41st on the heaven board, aren't you? The Bloody Butcher? Zhang Yuochen was slightly surprised. That's me, the man answered. Zhang Yuochen carefully scrutinized Page. He had trouble associating the man before him with the Bloody Butcher. He looked more like a weak scholar. Page had earned an illustrious prestige in the eastern region, for making it as the 41st master on the heaven board. Like Xu Hai, Page was also a returning student. He had been practicing in the Saint Academy for 10 years. Even Alcyone, who stood to the side in a daze, was shocked. She did not expect that Page, such a master who had been famous for years, would take the initiative to challenge a new generation saint. Although Zhang Yuochen is very strong, he could never match a top master like Page. Alcyone strongly suspected that Zhang Yuochen could be a match for Page. There was a hint of complacency in Zai Yongxi's eyes. Xu Hai even sent for Page. Zhang Yuochen is going to have a rough time. Within the boundaries of the eastern region, there are only a few people under the fish dragon realm who can rival Page. Zhang Yuochen is nothing. Zhuo Qing concurred. He stood by, ready to watch with his arms crossed. Swish. Behind Page, an illusory image of a scarlet demon began to form. It was about 10 meters high and had 3 heads and 6 arms. Each of the heads began to roar, suddenly forming a fierce Feng Xuan. It was not Page's martial soul, but a ghost-level martial technique, the Blood Devil image. During the competition between Zhang Yuochen and Alcyone, Page had seen that Zhang Yuochen's Achilles heel was that he had not practiced ghost-level martial techniques. No matter how exquisitely the martial techniques of superior class spiritual stage were performed, they were not comparable to those of ghost level. Once Zhang Yuochen encountered a real superior, he would suffer considerably. And Page, obviously, was a real superior. Blood Devil image, destruction of all living creatures. Page shouted. He stood in the distance, twisting his back and raising his arms. He struck a blow in the air with all his bones humming. The Blood Devil image, guided by his power, threw a huge scarlet punch. It was like a blood cloud sweeping towards Zhang Yuochen. Though the force of the punch hadn't arrived yet, a hurricane was already sweeping through. It was so violent, it seemed like it would blow Zhang Yuochen away. Swoosh. Suddenly, Nihonglu flew in from afar and landed in front of Zhang Yuochen. He quickly stretched out his right arm and let out an energetic growl. Break. The Blood Devil image was instantly shattered by a powerful force. It turned into wisps of blood fog and returned into Page. Page could not help but retreat 14 steps before barely steadying himself. He stared at Nihonglu and said in a cold voice, "Who are you?" Meanwhile, Xu Hai walked toward Nihonglu. "Sir, your cultivation is powerful. But even so, you shouldn't intervene in this matter. It won't do you any good." Nihonglu's lips curved. What a shame. Senior saints fighting with a new one, the big, strong and numerous bullying the small, weak and solitary. "I'm certainly going to help him." Xu Hai laughed. Page and Zhang Yuochen are both in the heaven realm. Why not? Page entered the Saint Academy 10 years ago. He is nearly 50. Zhang Yuochen, on the other hand, just entered today and is only 20. Such a clean match. Nihonglu answered in utter scorn. Mind your own business. Xihai's eyes were suddenly covered with a cold fury. He took out the two swords on his back and mobilized his genuine chi into blades. The two combat swords contained different power. One emitted a glow of a flame and the other sent out a freezing icing air. These two forces combined to form a giant sword technique circle aimed at Nihonglu. Xihai had broken through the warrior's limit and reached the first change of the fish-dragon realm. Innate embryonic breath. The sword technique he was performing was of the inferior class ghost level. However, the power it carried was more powerful than Aoxinyan's sword technique. This did not mean the sky sword techniques could never measure up to those Xihai performed, but her cultivation was not as strong as his. Sword techniques of the same inferior class ghost level were different based on the performer's cultivation. Nihonglu shook his head gently and reached out his glossy hand. He mobilized his genuine chi and then shot it out. Boom! Xihai spat out a mouthful of blood and hurtled backwards. With a bang he fell more than 33 meters away. His whole body was in pain. His skin even cracked, bursting out more than a dozen long cuts. If Nihonglu had attacked just a little bit harder, he might have been crushed. Page Zai Yongxi and Zuo Qiuling all changed their faces and stared at Nihonglu with shock. They had no idea of Nihonglu's strength, but they did know Xihai's. Xihai had entered the top 100 on the heaven board when he was still in the heaven realm. Now that he had broken into the fish-dragon realm, his cultivation must have been even more unfathomable. However, Nihonglu had just defeated him easily. It was too difficult to guess the upper limit of his strength. Nihonglu withdrew his hand and stared at Xihai, who was trembling and twisting on the ground. You are not qualified to fight with me. Unless the saintly being of Saint Xigentry releases himself from refining, you'd better restrain yourselves. Next time, I won't let you go. You, who the hell are you? Xihai struggled to his feet with both hands supporting the ground. Nihonglu. He responded. Nihonglu and Zhang Yuochen turned and left. Nihonglu. Is it him? Page grew pale. He turned and made eye contact with Xihai. Xihai nodded with one hand on his chest. In view of such a powerful strength, it must be him. He was one of the last saints. 20 years ago. Even though he was the youngest saint in the first group of sword technique department, he could already rank in the top 10 of the first group. It's said that he left the Saint Academy over a disagreement with the group leader. I can't believe he's back. Zai Yongxi asked, Elder Brother Xu, what should we do now? If Nihonglu is helping him, no one in Saint Academy can take Zhang Yuochen down. There is nothing to worry about, he replied. The saintly being of our Saint Xigentry is going to release himself from refining. By then, even Ten Nihonglu will fail to protect Zhang Ruken. For now, even if we cannot kill Zhang Yuochen, we can humiliate him severely. At that time, what qualification will he have to compete for the young master position? That's great. Page said. I heard that the saintly being of Saint Xigentry is secluding himself for refining, trying to attain the 9th change in the fish-dragon realm. Once he succeeds, he will definitely be invincible among saints. Zai Yongxi, Zuo Qiuling, you two keep monitoring Zhang Yuochen's every move. Xihai added, with gloomy seriousness, I assume that Zhang Yuochen will surely go to the battlefield of the primitive world and strive for the ultimate realm of the heaven realm. If we can take this opportunity to eliminate him, why even bother the saintly being? Zai Yongxi and Zuo Qiuling nodded and left immediately. Zhang Yuochen left Saint Mountain for the Pavilion of Book Collection in the Saint Academy. Instead of joining him, Nihonglu went to visit some old friends in the Saint Academy. They parted temporarily. The Pavilion of Book Collection was built underground as an inverted tower. It had 13 floors. The Pavilion of Book Collection had a long history and various books. Its countless collections included books on multifarious materials, such as bones, iron rolls, jade books, bamboo slips, and so on. Rare books such as ones about exercises, unique martial techniques, a catalogue of arrays, methods of controlling beasts, human geography, all could be found here. Zhang Yuochen did not come here for these rare exercises books or unique martial techniques, but for the books about the primitive world. This kind of book was filed under human geography on the first floor of the pavilion. There were many new saints in the Pavilion of Book Collection with a strong desire for knowledge. However, They were looking for the books on unique martial techniques. Most of them went directly to the second or third floor. Only a few would stop on the first floor. After all, books here were mostly about basic knowledge. There was the 10 forbidden areas of Kunlun's field, the collection of overseas islands, the 8 sacred earth aristocratic families in the Middle Ages in the eastern region, and so on. Zhang Yuochen searched for about an hour and finally found a copy of the Brief of the 3000 Primitive Worlds. The book was quite thick, and the text was very small. If you did not infuse genuine qi into your eyes beforehand, you could only see black dots on the pages. Obviously, the predecessor who wrote this book was also an outstanding master.